Good morning, everyone. Alana here from Wilderness Torah. I'm the Community Programs Manager. I'm excited to welcome you in here to the virtual village. We are truly looking towards the natural world and asking, what can this time teach us? As a part of awakening earth-based traditions of Judaism, Wilderness Torah creates village life during our immersive land-based festivals by uplifting and encouraging the individual gifts of the collective community. 4 times a week in this virtual village space, you will learn with Wilderness Torah community members who are sharing their gifts, as well as longtime stakeholders in the earth-based Jewish movement, such as Rabbi Tirza Firestone. Would love to see a raise of hands for anyone that this is your first virtual village program. Yay, wonderful. And anyone that this is your first Wilderness Torah program. Yay, amazing. Well, we're very excited to have you all here. And we are committed to keeping the virtual village accessible and free. If you would like to support Wilderness Torah in this effort, we welcome any and all donations, big or small, as we endeavor to provide Jewish wisdom and community building during this extremely hard time. If you are new to Wilderness Torah and would like to learn more about what we do, my peer Malka is going to share a couple links in the chat. One is more info about our virtual village programming. Another is to get on our newsletter, and we'd love to hear your feedback about how the virtual village is going for you. This session is being recorded and live streamed to Facebook, so you should definitely go to our website and check out all of our previous sessions. We've had some extremely amazing people here and have been very thrilled to learn with them. And without further ado, super excited to welcome in Rabbi Dr. Tirza Firestone, who is a Jungian psychotherapist, author, and a spiritual leader in the International Jewish Renewal Movement. And we are extremely thrilled to have you here today.
So happy to be here. And hey, does Malka want to say a few things before we begin?
It's all you. You go for it.
Okay, great. Well, considering the moment, I thought it would be good to just focus our intention and dedicate this hour to with some prayer. So if you would go inside to your prayer place, however you do that, to close your eyes or just tune in, that we can attune ourselves to each other, to this sacred space, which is sacred even on in cyberspace, and coming together, joining our intentions to circumscribe this hour of time in the name of healing, unification. L'shem yichud kudsha brichu shchinte betchilu rechimu liyached shem yudhe bevavhe b'yichud hashlem b'shem kol beit Yisrael b'shem kol yoshvei tevel v'namar amen. I want to dedicate this hour to the healing of the names, the unification of our brokenness. With awe and with love, we open to you, Holy One, Holy Power that flows like a river through each of us and flows between us and among us. This small group and our larger communities, and joins every community together right now in this very broken open time. We are here to heal your name and to heal our names that have been sundered and broken off from the whole, for the sake of all creation, for the sake of all creatures, for the sake of all God wrestlers everywhere, in the name of truth. So many names I just want to name: Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, David McAtee, Tony McDade, Nina Pop, Breonna Taylor, for all the people who are being remembered today in the streets, who've been killed by racist violence. We want to say their names again and again. Their names are our names. Their story is our story. And let's see what comes from us today. I never quite know what the Torah of the moment is going to bring forth, but I'll start us out, and I'm looking forward to. First of all, can everyone hear? Okay, just put up your thumbs. Okay, great. I'd love to speak for a little while, tell you a little bit about myself, and then the juiciness is really from our interactivity. I speak to you today from the foothills of the Rocky Mountains, and I'm zooming in from Boulder, which is, we've had one demonstration here, but really the action is down the road about 40 minutes away in Denver today and every day. In particular, this land here, I want to just say about it a moment. It was the winter camp right at the base of the Rocky Mountains, between Estes Park and Denver, along the Chief Niwat's winter camp. That's where he and his Southern Arapaho people made their winter camp and lived in peace. They were the cousins of the Cheyenne people, and they were, I'm sure many of you know, were routed out from here with many massacres, one of the most famous of which was the Sand Creek Massacre. So this land is very powerful and alive, and speaking from this beautiful June 3rd day, bright blue skies, and also so beautiful. The gardens are starting to explode, and so painful, so painful. So a little bit about myself, for those of you who don't know me. I would say that I believe that every one of us has this is sort of a 101 Chassidut and mystical Jewish Hebraic teachings, that each of us is created with a special tikkun, and that each of us, and that word meaning a piece that we bring of reparation and restoration to the larger tikkun olam, the tikkun halev, that the reparation, the repair and restoration of the broken whole that we invoke at the beginning of every mitzvah. And my tikkun has to do with, I think it has to do with really thinking about it in terms of an earth-based orientation, and in terms of wilderness Torah, has to do with a seed project. You know, the seed projects are so precious right now around the world, harvesting the seeds that are pure, and the seeds that are life-giving, and the seeds that are going to take us into the future, come what may, for the next generations. And that has been my tikkun, is going back into the ground to harvest the seeds that are the most potent teachings, the most life-giving, and what are the seeds that are going to bring usable wisdom into the world, not only for our people, but for all people, because as we know, our stories are we're needing to dissolve the boundaries as much as possible and feed one another. So so that's really harvesting those seeds and keeping them pure. But I should say that I can't stand here with full integrity as a Jewish professional and a Jewish leader without saying that I also left Judaism for a really good long time, in my 20s and early 30s. And I came from a very Orthodox family, and along my ancestry is a long line of rabbis and cantors from Yekka, German and Hungarian, Austro-Hungarian Jews. And it was so patriarchal and so stultifying that I fled as soon as I could possibly flee, and did quite an odyssey. And some of you know my first book, With Roots in Heaven, about my odyssey away from Judaism, and that really informs my Judaism, coming back through another door, having married a Christian, a devout Christian, who uh, catalyzed in me this need to know more about my own devotion and my own, the seed, the bija, the seed teachings in Judaism. And at that time, this is already in the early 80s, and Reb Zalman Schachter Shalomi came into my life, Zichrona Livracha. May his memory be a blessing. His memory is a blessing. And I had been disowned from my family, and I had been, I was really cut off. So I was really a branch. I was really in a kind of an exile. And I'll come around to say why this is important. I really suffered that sense of being cut off. In Torah, we call it karet. And no one would speak to me. I was dead. And Reb Zalman came into my life just around then, and he said, "Oh, Nebuch, Tirtzala, don't worry. This is the Shechina. This isn't even you. This is the Shechina. She's doing all this." And I looked at him like, "What? What are you talking about?" He says, don't take this so personally. This is the Shechina who's stirring the pot of humanity from the very bottom now. And she wants it all mixed up. This is how she wants it. This is her doing. And, with that one fell swoop, that move just opened the aperture for me in sort of a Satori moment. And I realized that this was, or a Mochen de Gadlut moment, if you will. And I realized that this was really, this was so much bigger. A lot of us are coming back to Judaism for so many reasons. Many of you are coming back with this desire, and we'll talk about this too, this task that's born. It's like a fruit that's born out of our exile, born out of our being cut off from the land, cut off from our families, cut off from our inner truth, and seeking it, searching for it. At the moment, I'm going to weave back and forth a little bit here. We find ourselves in this moment, this incredibly poignant moment of grief and pain in this country, and where our Black brothers and sisters have their story just cracked open for it's in the collective consciousness. It is a moment of excruciating grief and suffering, where the intergenerational trauma of this people, and it's not only, it's also the Native Americans, it's also the people who have fallen at the hands of white supremacists, our own people, and many others. All peoples of color are just, the pain is shrieking. And it is a moment when the legacy of trauma has burst to the surface, and we can't look away. We can't look away. And it is a moment where you feel that story in Exodus where Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, who's still a fledgling, is looking at this, seeing in front of him the knee on the neck of his compatriot, the taskmaster, leaning over and beating the Jewish worker, and beating him to death. And that ire, that rage rises up in us, and we have to do something. And as Moses does, he just wants to attack the oppressor, and he does so, and then has to flee. So who doesn't feel that? It's almost in our blood, and it's in our, really, the mandate. If each of us has a tikkun, each people has a tikkun as well. Sort of each people has a sacred purpose that we're here in the world to fulfill, just like every individual. And we have to, this is in a sense our mandate for being, we could say. it's in our mandate for being. It's in the Torah of ourselves that we have to rise up, not to kill the oppressor, but to walk and to march and to protest and to give money and to take action and to be allies. Al tamod b'dam rayacha, this incredibly important mandate right now, not to stand by as blood is being spilled. So I came back to Judaism and obviously and became a rabbi in the early '90s and founded a community here in Boulder. And now my work is taking me a little bit farther flung into the work of intergenerational trauma and the work of intergenerational legacies and harvesting those seeds. So where are the purest seeds and how have our seeds become contaminated? I think that's a very big question. How has trauma, how has chosenness, how has victimhood, how has our oppression uh, over centuries contaminated our legacy so that we can't see straight, we can't see clearly, we can't feel. Our hearts have gotten cloistered, have gotten covered, so that we can't feel that scream of Moses in us, like to stop, to, that we have to help the people. And there's a very important teaching, I think, and I really want to hear from all of you and where you're sitting today. And so I'm hoping that I'm going to just speak for a little while longer, and then we'll have a discussion. And please bring your thoughts and your questions to the circle. These intergenerational legacies that become toxic, and then they obscure the Torah that we have been mandated to bring into the world, the light that we have been mandated to bring into the world. As Reb Zalman always taught, every collective, every ethnicity has its own Torah to bring to the world, and every system, every nationality, every ethnic group, every collective serves the body of Gaia as an organ, and each one has to be healthy. And there are many organs right now that are feverish, inflamed, almost rupturing because of the oppression that they've endured, and each one has to find its way to healing itself and helping heal the whole, and thereby helping heal the whole. For us, as I'm assuming that many people on this call listeners are from the Jewish or Hebraic lineage, our legacies, those pure seeds that I talked about in the beginning, those pure seeds that we can bring into the world, that can nourish, that must be preserved, are very, very deep. They're wise. They're always universal. The purest seeds are never just for us. They're for the world. And one of those seeds is, I believe, is Shabbat, is about stopping, is about resting, letting the land rest, about being recreated, about recreation and being recreated on the land. And one of them is about, is also very, perhaps even a little cliched, dor lador nagid kodlecha, from generation to generation, that there is a thread that passes through generation to generation, and that every legacy has its beauty and wisdom, and every generation, every teaching, we could say, has its shadow side and its profundity. And dor lador is, we usually say that, there's a Masorah, there's a tradition, the Torah is handed from generation to generation. Usually that was males from father to son and son to grandson, and which is all changing now, God willing, as is the image of God. But also we have to see that dor lador is also our wounds pass from generation to generation as well. our traumas pass from generation to generation, which is a lot of what my own research into neuroscience and depth psychology, my newest work is about, Wounds into Wisdom. And I want to end with one teaching that I think is very, very important, and that is one of a traumatologist, a famous traumatologist from Cyprus originally, who studied collectives post-war and post-oppression, post-genocide around the world. His name is Vamek Volkan. I talk about him in the book. And he talks about how wounds pass through, and we know this now through the field of epigenetics and neuroscience. We have clinical data about this. It's not only a figure of speech that generation to generation Torah passes and wounds pass. We also know this from with a scientific basis now. But he talks about how does it pass? How does trauma pass from generation to generation? And he says it passes into the tissues of the new generation through in the form of images. In the form of images. So powerful, powerful images that get transferred into the new generations. And if you think about what those images are from our, it's almost like there's a DNA, a visual DNA that gets passed down from seed to seed of what, here we go, I'm going to invoke Plato for a moment, and Plato's myth of the acorn. And maybe some of you know this. It's a very ancient and wonderful teaching that we know that each oak tree has, it's sprouted from an acorn. And he posited that every acorn has a minute image encoded within it, like a soul's code, you could say, of a picture of what that acorn could be if all the elements go in the right direction, if nobody stomps and crushes it, if there's enough sunlight and water, that acorn could look like this big, deeply rooted, hugely flowering and like an umbrella oak tree with great shade and healthy leaves, etc. And so he said, just so each human being has implanted, encoded in us, in the very seed of who we are, the picture of what we might be on our deathbeds, God willing, it's 120 years or however long we want to live, in our fullest realization. What does Tirza look like? What does Reb Zelig look like? What does Zachary look like? What do each of us look like? It's completely unique to us and fulfilled and, you know, huge, deeply rooted and huge, and filled with sustenance for the world. Getting back to Vamek Volkan now, Vamek says each of us has the cellular memory from that is implanted in us too as images. And some of these images after war and after oppression really need to be scrubbed out because they get in the way of that enormity, our full radiance, our radical presence. And they occlude us, they occlude our light. And so these images, what are the images that we are given as Jews from our traumatic past? And how can they be processed, like the trauma is processed? Likewise, he says, trauma is passed down in the form of images, but also in the form of tasks. So what the last generation could not fulfill, those tasks, and this is all tacit, by the way, this is all nonverbal transmission, intergenerational transmission. We're gifted, so to speak. He says it's like a deposit, a task deposit, image deposits, and task deposits. And what are the tasks that we are ticketed with, so to speak? What are the tasks that we are tasked with from the generations that came before us? well, that could be, and in many cases it was, kill those suckers for me. I didn't get a chance to take revenge, and so you take revenge. And that's the unconscious, that's certainly the shadow. Or uphold our honor in the world because we were humiliated. That's another task that's deposited into the reservoir of the new generation. But likewise, it might be that many of us, and I'm talking about you, listeners, in who are Wilderness Torah Hasidim, uh, many of us, and I include myself in that, who have the pain of brokenness in our and exiled from the land, are tasked, have received a task to get back on the land, get back to the rivers, get back to the gardens, make food, and learn the Torah of organic farming, and learn the Torah of being in the wilderness, and learn the Torah of survival skills, and learn the Torah of embodiment, because that was lost to us. So that I feel very strongly, it's not an accident that that wilderness Torah has grown up out of seemingly nowhere. Where does that come from? Where did that seed hatch? How is that possible? And all the earth-based Jewish orientations now. So we'll pause here to take a breath. And I think before I close, let's see, good. We're perfect. I want to just, if you're open to it, everybody, and I'm going to put myself on gallery view here so I can see, are you open to doing a little guided meditation? Just give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down, or you just want to go into like a practice. Are we good with that? Okay, great. Your faces are so beautiful and receptive, and it's like, I can't hear you, but I see you, so it's lovely. So take a moment, however you like to go inside, and we'll do questions after. Bring your attention to your body, where you're seated or standing. Notice the sounds in your environment. As well as the sound of your own breath. And I'm going to ask you to just focus on your hands for a moment. Just let your hands be heavy. Wherever they are, they can be, in any shape, resting in your lap or wherever, just on a desk. Just let your hands be heavy and let your attention come to your hands. And if you would just feel each finger resting heavily under the weight of gravity and relaxing into that pull downward. So much so that you actually feel a little pulse in each finger, a little drum beat. And just allow that to be enjoyable. So as your hands continue to relax and then your entire body gets a little more quiet, your mind is alert. And I'd like you to just blank out the screen behind your eyes for a moment, as if you were sitting in a movie theater, for instance, and the movie hasn't started yet. It's just cool and calm and blank. And when you're ready, allow yourself to invite in an ancestor, and an ancestor that could be from your bloodline. It could be from another bloodline who you feel is somehow a kindred soul today. And this is somebody who is well, somebody who is helpful, benevolent, not somebody who's coming with a big peklach of tsaras, but somebody who's wants to show up for you specifically on this day of trouble, this day of pain. And just allow that screen to be open and wide and see who wants to show up. It could be a spiritual ally, a Rebbe, it could be a historical figure, it could be a Bubby or a Zaidi, it could be your namesake or a friend who's gone to the next world. Your hands are still heavy. And you're just allowing, you're holding open that invitation and allowing yourself to be surprised to see who wants to show up today. Today, Dafka, today, specifically today, and with all that is going on in the world. And if you can, just isolate it. It could be a crowd wants to come through onto your screen, but just allow it to be one soul. And this is somebody who's already on the other side. Bring them into focus now, this one being, whether it's a relative or another helpful, wise, and well being. See who it is and allow them to come into focus. Notice their energy, notice their being. What quality do they bring? What is their countenance? What is their panim, their face, bringing to you? Notice more. Notice what you haven't noticed. And notice if they're bringing a message for you today. Just not even verbally, just with their energy. What's the message that they're bringing you? Is it affirmation? Is it encouragement? Is it a more specific message? Could be a warning. Listen now. And I want you to, we're going to take one more minute. I want you to place before them, this is where I'm at. Call them by name and say, this is where I'm at. What can you offer me today? You might have a question, or just say, what would you tell me? What's your eitzah? What's your advice for me? Specifically for this day, going into the lunar eclipse, going into the streets, going into the trouble of COVID and the cities burning. What would you say to me today? if you have any question, do you mean this? Can you clarify? What about this? Please do that. Allow yourself to have a mini dialogue here. And now I would like you to focus just to encapsulate what you're bringing back, what you want to bring back. It may not be words, it may just be a feeling. It may just be a waft of a feeling of love, of support, of warning, of advice. It may not be in words, but may be in words. So encapsulate what that is for you, because it will evaporate very quickly when we come back into time and space. In your way now, I want you to bow with gratitude, with acknowledgement. And if you haven't received anything, if you haven't seen anybody, don't worry. Some of us don't visualize like this, and there's other ways of getting this material. Begin to transition back with a bow, saying thank you and saying goodbye, and may I call upon you again. Can you help me more? Can you offer me continuing guidance if that feels correct? And that may not be what happened for you. So be appropriate to the moment for yourself. And then when you're ready, find your hands and just rub them together and create some heat. Create heat and place that heat somewhere on your body that needs it, that wants that healing warmth. Okay, my friends, wiggle your toes, please, and take a stretch. Come fully back into your body, and get a sip of water if that feels right to you. And we'll just, however Virtual Village runs its Q&A, I'm here, Hineni and Ilana, or if you'd like to do that.
Yeah, so if you'd like to ask a question, feel free to either virtually raise your hand or show me that you're raising your hand and I can unmute you. And yeah, we'll start going that way.
And it can just be a check-in. It doesn't have to be a question, and it doesn't have to be profound. I want to learn from you guys too.
I'll jump in. I guess this would be kind of maybe half a check-in, half a question. My name's Ophir, by the way.
Hey, Ophir.
Yeah, I think like some of the deep grief I'm holding around some intergenerational trauma. I'm just like, I'm holding for, to being part of a lineage, and, my grandparents, on both sides, like fled persecution, and then for people who have experienced violence and persecution, how quickly and have experienced also folks standing up for them, and like knowing that was part of their journey, and then stay silent in the face of others' injustices, and then use their injustice as a way of also justifying their lack of like involvement or care, and also like another thing that kind of came up like when I've been reading some of the like social media news feeds and like the Jewish community, and like folks saying like, well, where are the Black folks when the synagogue was vandalized, and just like using like that, like the zero sum game in terms of justice. And yeah, just like holding like, where does that like racism and like that, where does that come from, like in terms of the trauma, like where does it originate? And yeah, and I don't know, yeah, I don't expect to have answers to that questions, but
Thanks, Ophir. Yeah, I mean, I it's like it's painful, it's contractive to hear you even describe it, because that's where many of us came from. In our Jewish upbringing is it was pretty racist. I don't say that word very often in public, but my background was extremely racist, and also beautiful, but also so I tend to focus on the parts of the Jewish community right now that are high-minded, that are empathic, that are everything from Wilderness Torah to JVP to Bend the Ark to Trua to these amazing, the new growth. You could say the cutting edge of how I see it, the new growth in the Jewish body, which is of the Jewish tree that is pushing out and saying, no, that's old paradigm, and it's rooted in fear, and it's rooted in like closing the ranks around us. It's a ghetto mentality, which is understandable, given what we can't judge, what our grandparents went through, and great grandparents, and on up for thousands of years, really. But we're here to innovate. We're here to grow, how a tree grows outward, and to cut new, to cut a new ring. And that's why this is a beautiful gathering, because we're not coming from that place. And I just try to focus, I just try not to get into those conversations. Basically, that's because I go down. It just makes me feel heavy and sad. So,
right.
Yeah.
And
what
like,
do you do? What's your tool? What do you do with that? Do you answer them back? What's your?
yeah, I think part of it is I do try to, like name that. I think just like the point question of like Holocaust, wherever Jewish persecution, like thinking about the people who stood up, people who are not necessarily from our tribe or affinity group, and stood up for us, and like,
Yeah.
Just put yourself in any shoes, any like group of people crying out. There's a reason they're crying out.
Yeah.
And if we don't even take the time to listen, actually receive that, and just deflect it with our own trauma, then we're doing the same thing that we create a whole culture around being the victim of.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's huge. I mean, so hanging out in the the Danish people, the Moroccan people, the Dutch people who took in children, the Kindertransport, the Schindlers, the Hintons, there's so many rescuers, and just sort of aligning yourself with that kind of mentality. To me, that just changes the whole energy in my being, right? Just like it makes you feel like, oh, I want to be that. I want to be that right now. And there's no shortage of stories that we can tune into. So it's so beautiful. Thank you.
And I think actually like by showing up is like, actually for me, what I found is like such actually deep, potent way of metabolizing the trauma, like from my ancestors, and actually like through actually action, and actually like feeling like I could put my body out there.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's transforming it. Yeah.
Beautiful. Taking action. So I'll just say one thing in Wounds into Wisdom, this new book, it's been out a year now, and talking to amazing trauma survivors Jewish around the world, and taking action is, what did they all say? How did they get through their eye of their needle and live through the tragedies? And clearly taking action was the way they metabolized facing the pain, harnessing the power of their pain, and finding other people who are like-minded, like in a wilderness Torah or the virtual village, like signing on with people who are like-minded to find new family and staying away from the old, because that can really bring you down. Staying out of victimhood, staying sort of transforming our sense of chosenness. What are we chosen for God's sake, right? But taking action is the ultimate. It's like every one of them took action somewhere in the world. And that was how they, exactly like you said, metabolized their trauma. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
I also actually since we're already unmuted, but
Hi. Yeah.
Hi, Tirza, it's good to see you.
Good to see you. My gosh, where are you?
In Oakland, California.
Awesome.
Yeah. Just something that like came up to me as we were doing the meditation, and came to me like we're having me and Ophir right now live in a multiracial community in Oakland called Canticle Farm, and so we've been having like some stuff around the meetings around the fire to process everything that's happening. Right. And one night around the fire, this just came up to me of like, oh, this is deep in my bones. Like the tools for resiliency, like no matter what happens, like no matter, like that we have like inherited from our ancestors, like our ancestors have withstood a lot. And so right, just to trust, and even now I like had this meditation of like an ancestor of like, there's nothing to fear. Like you have all the tools inside of you, to be resilient, to stand, in truth, and, just keep on connecting to us, keep on connecting to God, and you're going to be, held within that.
Amen.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. So good to see you.
Yeah, you too.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Kimberly, if you'd like to share, we welcome you in.
Sure. Hello. Yeah, so I guess, I don't know a specific question, but I'm sure there's one here. So I'll just start with a share for me, I'm Jewish through my sperm donor, and I was not raised Jewish. And so I know at some level that there's trauma that I inherited through that DNA line. And then also on my mother's side, there's direct trauma that I inherited from my grandparents and through my mother. And so it's like, I don't know any named relatives that are healthy and well. Like I don't know their names, right, of ancestors. And so I sort of go back into sort of a like generalized, like sometimes I get specifics, but it doesn't feel like this is necessarily a real person that lived. It's just sort of an amalgamation of whatever, so that like it was difficult when you were like, address them by name. I was like, I don't know a name, so sort of like, well, all right, just do the best I can and whatever comes up. But it's interesting for me also because it's like I'm connecting to lineage without having specific direct like teaching of that from a parent, at least for my Jewish side.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you have any wisdom around that.
Okay, it's so good. And this is I hear the question in that, like, how do I connect with my ancestral wisdom when I can't connect? Like there's no individual person there. And that has come up for, in every class that I've ever taught. Many people simply don't have the, the figures certainly not in the beginning. You may. And what I would suggest to you, is it Kimberly? What I would suggest to you is that you start with a historical figure, leap bloodlines, jump into another bloodline and reflect to yourself who just makes you quake with inspiration, who, it could be someone from Torah, it could be someone from history, it could be someone who's, you just feel that you emulate them, you know, whether it's Martin Luther King Jr. or if it's Miriam the prophetess, or it's somebody who you have heard about. And the teaching goes that I have been taught that when we say the name of a great person, it could be, you know, Albert Schweitzer, it could be Mother Teresa, it could be someone from Torah. When we call with a sincere heart upon one of these wisdom figures and leaders, someone who walked the earth, and we're in need, that no matter where they are in the universe, they reconstellate and join us. And when we are really crying out for help. And I truly believe that. I truly believe that the energy that their Rishimu, if you will, the wake that they carry in their energy system reconstellates and allows us to feel, it's like a channel opens. So I would have you think about, at least for now, because you can also do research into your mother's side. I don't know if the records are sealed on your dad's side, the sperm donor side. I work with people who are sperm donees, for lack of a better word, and the records are sealed. They'll never be able to know. But you know, on your mom's side, there are ways to scratch the surface and go for a little further up beyond the trauma. But in the meantime, I would just go with historical figures, someone who really touches you, someone who you feel is a kindred soul, kindred spirit. Okay, great question.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. And I actually was able to find my sperm donor on 23andMe, which was amazing.
Oh.
Yeah. Pretty cool to connect with him.
Did you contact them?
Yeah. We met once in person and also have been connecting remotely, you know, and yeah. And he has 2 kids. So now I've never had a genetic sibling before. So that's interesting too, but it's the whole thing.
Oh, you're on a journey.
Yeah. And I want to I really appreciate what you're saying about connecting with what I do know, like a historical figure that resonates for me. And something that's coming up for me that also relates to what you talked about with Ophir. Hi, Ophir, by the way. Is like, okay, it makes sense that first to resource what you do know and the good that is there and that you can tap into. And it also feels really important to, at some point, use that resourcing to then look at the trauma, right? Or look at the unresourced, because it can be too much of like, oh, just pick the good things in the ancestral line. Right. Like, I don't see color, I don't see race, everybody's the same. Well, then you're bypassing the actual pain and harm and work that needs to be done.
Yeah, Kimberly's right on, everybody. It's really important to have you sort of, in a sense, you cultivate a garden of allies first. You cultivate like a board of advisors, so to speak, and then you go from there. And then you start to, there's a whole methodology of working on the trauma in your lineage. And I teach this in other settings. I used to teach it in person. Now I teach it through the Shift Network. But Kimberly is right. You start with what's well and solid and wise. You never jump into, I'm just going to heal my ancestral wounds. We all need help. We need helpers. Good. Do we have time for one more?
Go for it, Zelig.
Cool. Thank you, Reb Tirta. Amazing to have you here.
Amazing, yeah.
So with, the 3 or 4 minutes we have left, I'd like to ask you this question. I love the image that you offered of we're a seed, and we have the potential to grow into this fantastic, amazing tree. I can see it shimmering, each one of us. and then the traumas of our experiences in life, or of our epigenetic trauma of our past, you know, it stunts the growth. And then you said that this is based on images that we receive from the past, and then we have the capacity or potential to scrub these images so that we can become that full potential. So I'd love for you to comment briefly, just on, like, what do you mean by scrubbing those images? How do we do that? And how does that relate to our relationship to the earth, to nature, to and the traditions of Judaism? You know, I know that's a whole field that I just asked you about, but maybe you could give us a couple touch points.
Yeah. I think I use the word, it's interesting, scrub, scour. I don't believe in neutralizing or sterilizing things, but I think that bites you in the butt ultimately. But we're looking for, and maybe I needed to be a little bit more careful with my language, is to take those images and maximize them, to take them and hold them, acknowledge them. So it's really hard. Anyone in my generation has, post-Holocaust generation, I don't know about you guys, we have images of Holocaust. You know, my dad took pictures. He was at the liberation of Bergen-Belsen, and his pictures shaped his whole life. So those images, I didn't see them until after he died, because they were locked away in his file cabinet, but they shaped my life too, and they shaped all of our siblings, my siblings. So those images are so, how do you take those images and then use them? You know, like I think Ophir said, metabolize them, or metabolize those images and use them. So right now, the image of George Floyd, that is playing, reverberating in everybody's psyche in the country, or many people. And so how do you take that image and you allow it to ignite your spirit, ignite your soul to action? Like, no, that is not where I want to live. I don't want to live on a planet like that. We take those images of Ra, of darkness and separation and hatred and viciousness, and we use them to ignite us. In terms of the earth, I think we're talking about psyche, the images in psyche and how we embody them. I mean, that's a whole Torah of how psyche manifests in body and how body manifests in earth. I think that we'd have to do a little tikkun leil limud on that one. But suffice it to say that those images can ignite us to fulfill our tikkun. We don't want to shut them down, and that's why I want to say we don't want to scour them just to bleach them out of existence. We want to use them to help us be reminded, to remind ourselves of what we're here to do and what we're here. Like, you know, somebody who, I could wax on this, we don't have time, but somebody who is really connected to their bodies, connected to their pain, connected to their grief, connected to their earth, could not act that viciousness out. You just couldn't. There's something so occluded in the action of George Floyd, what happened, his death. That's to me an aberration. That hatred is an aberration of humanity. So how did that happen, and how was he cut off from his belly, from his heart, from his earth, from his all of that is about a much bigger tikkun. All I know is that the images that are planted in me have to fire me into action and into what my own reparative task is here in this world. Does that get anywhere near where you were going, Reb Zelig?
It's a great start. I just ordered your book, and I'll come to your classes, and we'd love to hear about that too.
Great.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to do that tikkun leil tikkun.
It's a weaving that needs to be, you know, we want to expand that, like that. There's a whole tapestry that it's on the loom, but only partially. The warp is there, but not the weft, or something like that.
Yeah, I'm excited for that.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you, everybody. very, very much. Good to meet you all.
Thank you so much, Tirsa, for joining us today. Malka here with the Wilderness Torah team. As the sirens are ever present behind me, as some of you might hear, here we are. And thanks so much for holding space for us today. Want to say thanks to all of the community for showing up as well. And want to let you all know about other offerings we have this week. We'll be learning Wilderness in the Jewish Mind, Awakening Our Jewish Soul with Rabbi Zelig tomorrow. And as well, Nigun singing with Eli and Becca of the Nigun Collective. Next week, we will be hosting a very special virtual village called Understanding and Dismantling White Supremacy with Sophia Sobko, who will be facilitating a really profound and timely conversation for us. And as well on Monday, we'll have the end of the Hebrew calendar with Amashe. And Friday, Waste Hacks, Bokashi Composting with Deborah Browse. And thank you so much. Again, you can check out all of our stuff on our website, our newsletter, Facebook or Instagram for more updates. You can consider sharing with anyone across the world right now. If you know someone who could benefit from this program, you can invite them to our Facebook events or our virtual village discussion group on Facebook. My peer Lana has inserted some links into the chat so you can sign up for our newsletter, learn more about us, and support our work if you feel called, as well as signing up, filling out our survey so we can learn how to support you more. And Tirsa, thank you so much again for guiding us through such a grounding and really needed space today. And we are so honored to have you join us and to learn with you. And I'll pass it back to you. Please let folks know about any upcoming classes you might have or ways that folks can stay in touch with you and your work. And yeah, wishing everybody here deep bows and blessings, safety, protection, wellness, and a beautiful day.
Amen. Thanks, Malka. And yeah, just be in touch, tearsofirestone.com. There's a ton of stuff coming out, and unfortunately it's all online these days. It's not in person, but have a new class on ancestral healing coming out starting early August, right up to Rosh Hashanah. And it's a big personal dive into our own work and the world in this moment of time. Thanks to everybody. Thanks to Reb Zelig and to all of you. May everybody be safe and well and pass the wellness on to the world. Thanks a lot.
Thank you all. Goodbye. Have a beautiful day.